right. Thanks, Ashley.
Thanks for being here with us, Senator. I appreciate it. Pretty busy
Super
day.
great. Super nice to get away from the Hill for a little bit.
Yeah. Anything going on today you want to address right off the bat, having to do with an encrypted messaging app?
Nothing. Yeah. That was pretty outrageous, I have to say, in the scheme of things. Kind of putting the Hillary email thing to rest forever. But I mean, these were the top security advisors and the president's top security people, and they were corresponding, according to Goldberg's article, about targets, about assets, about things like this. They now claim it wasn't classified, which doesn't make any sense to me. But this was quite a hearing that Mark Warner and others participated in today. And some of the Republicans, I think it was John Cornyn, I don't ever want to quote people wrong in this era of facts always right, but he said it was a huge screw up. And it was more than that, in that we don't know if this is something they've been doing for a while. This seems like it couldn't be the first time. And what I thought was ironic is today that we had a classified briefing that Senator Murkowski did with just a few senators on the Arctic. I'm never going to say what was said. But there were a bunch of people there from state, defense, everything, that worked diligently, line people on these issues. And you know, to go into that briefing on the Arctic, we had to lock our cell phones in a locked thing. I had to take this Fitbit off, right? Everything went in there, lost steps, you know, everything. And I have to lock, such a shame. But I had to lock everything up, as did all of the staff in there, in this, what we call the skiff, in one of these rooms that has been set up specifically so no one can bug them. We had an incident last year where one of the senators had a hearing aid, not that any of them have them anyway, that had a Bluetooth thing that they realized was still, I mean, we take all these precautions all the time. And to think that these are the nation's top defense security people just like, hey, on an app that is, while that app is known to be secure and there is things, but this isn't something that you would use, that we ever use as senators. We have some of these signal text lines. We never would ever put anything classified on it because it's just, nothing is really foolproof unless you use the best things available. So it really did concern me, and it kind of reminded me of this whole thing with just like break things and Elon Musk and the Social Security numbers and everyone's information and what's going on. I mean, they got to get their act together.
What would accountability look like for this type of slip up as it's being described?
Well, I think they're going to, with the Republican-run Congress, they're going to have to take it on themselves and have an investigation. Obviously, we're calling for that, and get to the bottom of the questions I just raised. Is really, why are these assets not classified, and what were other communications that they had on something that wasn't a classified line?
Well, I'm glad we could address that crazy news of the day, but I do want to talk to you about other types of bipartisan tech regulation, including on AI, which you've done bills on elections and security, and making sure people know what they're seeing, and that artists and creators are protected when it comes to using AI. So in general, what do you think of the Trump administration's shift away from sort of a tone of focusing on safety to sort of innovation first, let's just move and go?
So I want to start with my favorite quote on AI, which is a David Brooks quote, which he said, "The people in AI seem to be experiencing radically different brain states all at once. I found it incredibly hard to write about AI," he said, "because it is literally unknowable whether this technology is leading us to heaven or hell." So we want it to lead us to heaven. As someone as the Mayo Clinic in their home state and works on rare disease issues, I mean, there is so much promise here with AI. But to do it right, we need to have some rules of the road in place. And if America wants to lead as we are and as we can do in the future, I think one of the lessons we've learned from some of the other tech debacles is that let's put these rules of the road in place that work. Senator Thune and I, he happens to be the majority leader now, so that's good. We worked together on a bill that both consumer groups and some of the AI groups have endorsed, which calls for This is for non-defense applications of AI, but it looks at the more risky things like biometrics and some of the energy grid data, things like that, and puts in place some standards. And then for other uses like healthcare and education and other things, sets up a NIST standard situation. And so those kinds of things, at the very least, we should be putting those things in law. And then I would go beyond that as you look at scams. There's things we must do with that, or it's going to undercut the amazing possibilities that we're already seeing in the use of AI if we don't have protections in. One of my own employees in Minnesota, her son is serving in the Marines. Her husband got a call. Her son was deployed. They did not know where. And the call was the kid, but it wasn't really the kid saying, I need help, because they knew he was in the service. They scraped his voice off of Facebook. And of course, the husband was savvy enough, and I'm not sure a grandma or grandpa would have been at that moment, but he said, who is this? Is this really you? And then they hung up. So, and obviously it wasn't their son. So those kinds of things we have to guard against. Democracy, you mentioned these, nice waters. The democracy issue with these AI created ads, and not saying it should be banned, but looking at it should be banned if it makes you think it's a candidate when it's not. That's a bill that I have put forward with Senator Hawley, with other Republicans. Then Senator Murkowski and I have one that would at least require labeling for other uses of AI. We're not talking about like hair color or things like this. And this is in political ads. So we at least know what's going on. And then the final issue that I'd raise is just intellectual property generally, and making sure people have a right over their own images. These are all things, I'm not saying they're simple, but they're things that with Senator Schumer and Senator Rounds and Senator Heinrich and others, that we were able to have a bunch of bipartisan meetings over the last year. And we were able to come up with some ideas, and I really think it would be time to put those into action. I hope Senator Thune, who knows a lot about this from his work on the Commerce Committee, will help us to do that. So while it may not be on everyone's first agenda, when they're like, people can't get their Social Security and they're waiting on the line for 5 hours, and some of these other things that have been done that have created self-inflicted wounds from my own view, that we could be doing reform and doing all kinds of things, which the Trump administration clearly wants to do. But the problem is when we're off going into all these directions, it makes it hard to work on some things that actually could advance AI rules of the road, doing something about federal privacy legislation, looking at beyond that when you look at the employment issues, housing, childcare. I was just on a 14-county tour in rural Minnesota. They're up in arms over these tariffs. They don't like that people are booing our teams at hockey games, but way beyond that, Minnesota, way beyond that, these are huge export markets for our farmers and ranchers and manufacturers. And so this is a lot of headwinds coming at rural America right now. So I hope that we can see some stabilization of the economy so that we can move forward on the challenges that are right in front of us.
And you mentioned a couple of AI and elections bills. Those did pass the Rules Committee last year. Where do they stand now? Are you going to reintroduce them?
Oh, on the 8th, they passed just with a one vote margin, but they were on the two bills I mentioned on democracy, as well as one that was more about giving assistance to state election commissions. That one was bipartisan, that passed with everyone, but the other two were just a one vote margin. So I think it'll be hard to move on those bills. My Rules Committee work, I was the chair of the Rules Committee, which meant I chaired Donald Trump's inauguration, something I took on a year before. I'm the only person in the history of America that has been in a car for 20 minutes with Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And maybe if you invite me back in the future, I'll reveal everything that happened.
You guys have a signal chat going, the three of you?
Yeah, there's a major signal line there.
Okay.
Major signal line. But the point of that is that now I am the ranking on agriculture, which is actually a very timely thing with everything that we are doing when it comes to tariffs and the like. But my job was taken over by Mitch McConnell. That's where he went. So I always remind the senators when they come up to me about some rules issue relating to the Senate, I was always the mom. And I was always helping them with entrances and milk and everything on the floor. And I'm like, Mom's taking a break. So
not your job anymore.
You go talk to Mitch now.
Yeah.
But that is the issue of where that is right now. So he was vehemently opposed to advancing those bills. So he especially, not all Republicans, some of them were. So it makes me think it would be hard to move those bills on that committee.
And you've been doing bipartisan tech legislation for years. I mean, we had the Honest Ads Act, which you worked on with Senator McCain and Lindsey Graham, who still
kept on it.
And you've been trying to get these bills passed for years since we really started talking about social media and its role in democracy. What are some lessons you've learned from dealing with tech lobbyists over the years, and how has it sort of changed your tactics?
Hey out there. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so I think that it's sad that we haven't gotten some of these things done. I think if some of the tech companies were maybe honest about this, if they could roll back time, they might have wished that they hadn't at first opposed a federal privacy law, so we don't have a patchwork of laws, and now we're here with a lot of people wanting to get it done, but it's harder to do. I think that when you look at the fentanyl problem online, about a third of the cases of kids are getting hooked, or they're having a one moment time where they try to think they're getting a Percocet and then they get something laced with fentanyl and they die, and all those lawsuits coming out of that. Or if they would have known what would have been happening with online porn, and that Take It Down bill was the bill that the president in the State of the Union, that was my bill with Ted Cruz, Klobuchar, that he commended Melania on for endorsing, which we appreciated that she endorsed it. All of these things are coming about from things that could have not had to have happened if there had been some stricter rules put in place on kids and on drugs being sold on the internet. In the words of our former DEA head, the cartels in Mexico and China have basically harnessed the internet for the purpose of selling fentanyl. So I don't know why there is still opposition. Some of the bills I mentioned, they are supporting, but I think we would be much better off if we come forward, and I've told this to both the former presidents as well as President Trump, in coming forward with a package of bipartisan bills to put in place. And that includes, of course, some of the antitrust bills and the like. I don't think it would one bit destroy these companies. I think it might even make them, it would make them more responsible. It would make our society better. It would help tech to go back to the glory of popularity that it once was, if we had ways for moms and dads to protect their kids on the internet. So I haven't given up on dealing with it. I do know it's an incredibly strong and tough lobby. We have passed some of the bills I just mentioned in the Senate, but not in the House. Some of the bigger bills, I call them, on not self-preferencing, the bill I have with Senator Grassley, that did pass out of judiciary, as you have pointed out, but it just gets ground down by the tech companies. They have a lot of power. I think that's actually waning a bit. Despite everything you read in the news, I think that there's a lot of parents and families that are really upset, and consumers, with what's going on. And I don't necessarily want that to happen. I want us to reach a point where we can have actual competition, and they're not pushing out smaller companies' products, or getting the Small Business Federation all against them because of what they're doing when they used to love the products at the beginning. So that is, I will not give up on this work. I think we've actually quietly been gaining some support. I'm not naive about what would be hard to pass in this Congress, but Senator Grassley and I just recently talked about our bill. We have got some of the other legislation that I mentioned, and I hope that they will come to the table and work with us.
Well, you ended just on time. So
of course, with a positive note.
Yes. I was going to ask you about the FTC firing.
Oh, could I just say one word about that,
yes.
please? I mean,
yes.
I don't understand this. I don't understand it legally, because the president is not allowed, except for misfeasance or other reasons, to fire these FTC commissioners. The Humphrey executor case from 90 years ago still stands and has been affirmed many times, which says these multi-commissioner agencies are legal. Big things that have happened in the past including what's going on right now with some of the tech rules, have always spanned Democratic-run and appointed committees that are 3-2 one way and then 3-2 the other way. But the virtue of the FTC has been there has been some bipartisan work, and it's helped consumers. $330 million that was collected just last year from scams. And I don't understand the legality of this. It makes no sense. And I actually think it sets backwards the work that a whole bunch of Republicans want to have done too. And it's not just about tech. It's about mergers that go too far. It's about scams and the like. So I hope they'll rethink it. I know the two commissioners, I talked to them over the last few days, are suing. I think they will be victorious. When you look at the case law, when you look at what happened in the NLRB case recently, when you look at even Justice Kavanaugh's words when he was on the DC Circuit, where he said these have been widely upheld, I'm paraphrasing this, these multi-commissioner commissions, and it's just more muck, when in fact we can be moving ahead with a lot of people's priorities. As I said at the inauguration in my 4 minutes, our democracy may be a hot mess, but it is our shelter in the storm, because I want to end by quoting Bob Dylan, because he's from Minnesota, and I'm obsessed with the movie A Complete Unknown.
Pretty good. It's pretty good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time on the main stage here. Stick around for a few more conversations, and then we'll see you at the reception.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.